Welcome to the Retirement Income Source, where it's all about income the old-fashioned way. Now, what I mean is actually the old-fashioned way is most people, prior to the 80s, when the bull market started coming around and people started making a lot of money hand over fist between the 80s and the 90s, investing for dividends was very common. And then somehow, somewhere, those strategies kind of got forgotten. So I'm Tim Sparks, and our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group, a financial firm right here in the heart of the Bluegrass. This show is for you, the listener. It's committed to you, to the listener, because there are better ways to get more mileage out of your money. What I teach here on the show is my 20 years of experiences of what to do, and also, most importantly, what not to do when you're starting to spend your retirement savings. See, whether you're a pre-retiree who wants to get it right or a retiree who wants to end well, all I can say is it's up to you to be diligent. Because at the end of the day, the markets go up, the markets go down. Over time, the markets go up. We all can agree on that. But we have to be prepared that income is constant. And since it's constant and we need income each and every month for the rest of our spending years, and those years could be, the next 20 to 30 plus years, that's a long time to be taking withdrawals out of your portfolio. And you need to really understand where is that money coming from whenever you're taking those withdrawals. And so that's what I mean when it comes to possibly spending principal, and you may not even know that that is actually happening. You see, problems usually don't occur until sometimes it's too late. It's like driving a car each and every year. You keep it clean, you change the oil, you change the radiator fluid in it when it's time to change, and you do all the proactive things that you can to be able to prevent future deterioration of that vehicle. Also, in the wintertime, each and every winter, we actually will be challenged with snow and ice, which means also there's going to be salt on the roads. And that salt over time, throughout the winter, it winds up getting up underneath our vehicle, and actually ultimately and over time will possibly rust out the bottom of our vehicle if we don't take care of it. Now, obviously, we don't take our vehicle out and clean underneath it so much, but the point is we need our vehicle, and we got to realize that the car is slowly rusting out, slowly deteriorating, and it's the same way when it comes to spending your money, because most people, unbeknownst to them, are actually spending money, spending their principal. 7 out of every $10 that comes out of their withdrawals are coming out of their own principal. The money that it took them 30 to 40 years to create, to actually develop over time and to grow over time. And now here they are, possibly can run out of money before they run out of breath in a shorter time frame, which is what you want to try to avoid. So that's the reason why I say it's so important to get informed and to understand the mechanics of how money works, especially when you're in retirement, because now you're taking withdrawals. And for some of you, and what the point of this show today is going to eventually have to take out required minimum distributions. Now, typically I wait toward the last quarter of the year to start talking about required minimum distributions. You know why that is? Is because most people wait till the last quarter of the year, or I should say sometimes the last month of the year, before they are forced to take out this minimum distribution. I know this by experience because I get phone calls from clients, or I have over the years, until we kind of decided that we're going to put together a proactive program to be able to prevent that from happening ahead of time, so that way they know they're going to be forced to take it out. Even if they want to still take it out at the end of the year, we tell them that, listen, most companies out there are bombarded with everybody waiting until the last minute to take required minimum distributions. So if you miss your required minimum distribution, as you already know, there could be a penalty. So you want to be proactive, and you want that minimum distribution to come out ahead of time, like clockwork, autopilot, so that way you don't have to worry about missing that required minimum distributions, and you can actually do that. And so, but what we did to be more preventive of that, we decided to let our clients know that, listen, come October, November, we would like for you to consider taking your required minimum distribution. And so we set up the withdrawals to come out toward the latter part of the year, especially if they're taking them out once a year, which is what I'd say 2/3 of our clients do. Now, there is some clients are actually taking out income anyway, and so they're already satisfying their minimum distributions if they're over the RMD age. And we're going to actually talk about that today. What is the required minimum distribution age? See, most people want to be prepared for required minimum distributions, and I find a lot of times people are not prepared, especially if they are one of those that wait till the last minute to take their minimum distributions, or maybe they're not even properly allocated for minimum distributions, or maybe they're paying or not going to realize they're now going to have to actually pay taxes on required minimum distributions if they've delayed all these years up until the age of required to take it out. So there's so many things that you need to know to be prepared, so that way when you are not caught by surprise. And sometimes people like to be able to plan. And with that being said, I want to get a commission report in your hand called Understanding Required Minimum Distributions. We abbreviate that for RMD. So if you hear me say RMDs throughout the show today, that's what I mean, required minimum distributions. And I like to get this commission report in your hand. It's a general commission report talking about everything you need to know in general about these RMDs. And you can have this report by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this to you or email it to you, whichever you prefer. Again, that number is 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and we're talking about, are you prepared for RMDs, required minimum distributions? Yes, most people have IRAs. I'm willing to bet about 90% of the audience that's listening to the radio show have IRAs. If you don't have IRAs, don't worry. If you have 401ks, they're very similar in a lot of ways. Why? Because you still got to take a required minimum distribution, even if you have a 401k, even if you have a 403b, even if you have a 457 or a thrift savings plan or a profit sharing plan. It doesn't matter. It's a duck, it quacks, and you are going to be required to take out a minimum distribution once you reach the certain age. So, what you're going to find out today, what are required minimum distributions? It's a minimum that you have to take out of your account each and every year. And why is that you have required minimum distributions? And when are they required or mandatory? There's a certain age now. If you delay them till you're forced to take them, then what is the age and how are they going to be taxed? Can I save money on taxes when taking them? What if I'm 65 years old and I'm going to delay taking IRAs? What can I do to be able to minimize some taxes into the future of these minimum distributions? I may not even have to take them anymore. Can I minimize Social Security taxation? Now that I'm taking them, what's the plan of action to make them the most efficient? You see, there's so many things that we a financial advisor should be able to answer for you, because at the end of the day, some people are just simple. They just want to go through life and just, take out the minimum distributions, not realizing that there could be some things that they can actually ultimately do that can make them more efficient, on the taxes they pay on Social Security and the taxes that they're paying ultimately because of the minimum distribution itself. So the purpose of this show and the content that I'm going to talk about in this show is to make it most efficient. How can you be efficient when it comes to required minimum distribution? And that also, and not neglecting, beneficiary designations. Because, there is proper estate planning when it comes to IRAs. So you want to know how to properly set up your IRAs so that way you pass the baton on to your non-spousal beneficiaries, which is ultimately your children. So as our show is always geared toward investing for income the old-fashioned way, when it comes to properly being prepared for required minimum distributions, we want to make sure that we're allocated in a way to be able to minimize spending our principal when we're required to take out these forced distributions. Therefore, we're adding more mileage to our principal of our IRA when we take out these distributions. And to do that, you got to have still income first methods to be able to get the most mileage out of your IRA. And so with that being said, I like to be able to introduce you to a book that I think would be very helpful to be able to understand income first methods. It's called The Retirement Income Source. Amazon bestseller, author Dave Scranton, a CFA. That is a financial analyst. What are financial analysts? Financial analysts are people that can actually make decisions internally, and matter of fact, large firms will hire to manage mutual funds or exchange traded funds, or even register investment advisor firms will actually hire to actually manage securities like stocks and bonds and so forth. And so you're hearing it straight from this type of individual, which is the people that actually you should be listening to when it comes to investing your money correctly in the market, because they have the right credentials. And if your strategy is geared toward interest and dividends, it requires a specialist, a CFA, that actually understands how that works and what companies you should own and what companies you should not own. And it takes experience, a lot of experience, be really good at managing income in the form of interest and dividends. And this book can be yours if you're one of the first 5 callers of today's Retirement Income Source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this to you or email it to you, or not email it to you, excuse me. We will mail this to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Again, great book. Income First Methods, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source of Tim Sparks. I'll be right back. Welcome to the Retirement Income Source of Tim Sparks, your host, and our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. Today we're talking about, are you prepared for RMDs? In other words, that's abbreviation for required minimum distribution. You see, when you're now forced to start taking out minimum distributions, if you're age 73, and the good news is, if your your year of birth, keep in mind your year of birth, 1958 or later, you get to actually delay your required minimum distribution as late as age 75. So, but whenever you're forced to take out these distributions, it's a certain percentage of your account. And that percentage basically should be earned in interest and dividends. That's the proper allocation if you want to get the most mileage out of your IRA. Now, some people are taking distributions prior. and in other words, you're already taking income out. And so the term required minimum, the word minimum means you may already be satisfying the minimum distributions, and so therefore you have nothing concerned about as far as satisfying the rules of the IRS rules that they place before you on when it comes to required minimum distributions. But at the end of the day, you're still having to take out these required minimum distributions once you reach at the age of 73. And most of the people right now that are listening to the show that are forced to take it out this year, if you turn age 73, yes, it's true, you can wait till April 1st of next year, but you got to take it out by April 1st, or there is a 25% penalty assessed to your accounts. Now, prior to Secure Act 2.0, 2022, it used to be a 50% penalty. And if you missed your required minimum distribution, as long as you filled out a quick letter to the IRS, I promise not to do it again, and hopefully you took the RMD. You had to prove you took the RMD. Let's just say you took it in took it in January and you missed it from the year before, then and also the CPA has to prepare a certain form for you. Once all that is turned in, a lot of times they would dismiss the 50% penalty. Well, unfortunately today they don't do that. So even though you still may have missed it, and sometimes people do miss their required minimum distribution, you will be still assessed 10% even though you do the proper paperwork. And at least that's what we're hearing. So you have to be prepared for that. And most importantly, you don't want to miss it anymore, because now you will be penalized where before you may not have been. Now keep in mind, ultimately it's the decision of the IRS, and they can choose whatever they want to when it's all said and done. So it is serious enough. That's the reason why they call them RMDs, and there is rules. And when you turn age 73, you've got to April 1st of the following year. Now, the downside to that, if you wait till April 1st of the following year to take out your first RMD, it's only the first one that you get to delay till the following year of the year that you turn 73. You have to actually take 2 required minimum distributions if you do delay it. And sometimes that's not good, because if you think about it for a moment, 2 distributions in the same year, if you got $1 million and you're having to take out $35,000 from the year before, and you decide to delay it the year till April 1st, that means you're going to take out $35,000 twice, and the other distribution is going to be slightly higher. Let's just say it's $36,000. At $71,000, it now has to come out of your account. So unless you have a really good year in the market, then your account value could drop as much as equivalent to whatever that distribution is. So you always run the risk of the double whammy in the year that you wind up delaying it. So we always discourage that, and that's the reason why we invest our clients for income in the first place. So that way, it doesn't really matter. They can they're better off to go ahead and take it the year before, because their distribution is just coming from interest and dividends in the first place. So RMDs basically exist. If you really think about it for a moment, you've been putting away money in 401ks and alike for many, many years. It doesn't matter if it's 403Bs or whatever your type of employer account is. This is money coming out of your paycheck, and you're funding your retirement savings. Well, they incentivized you and it benefited you for 30 to 40 years. But when you reach the age of 73 or 75, depending on your year of birth, then you're going to be forced to take out a distribution. And the reason why is because you have not had to pay any taxes all of those years leading up to those 2 particular ages. That's assuming you're not taking any distributions till then. So they want some of that money taxed while you're still alive. Now, the minimum distributions requirements are used. The table they use is what they call a uniform table, And that uniform table is as of, I think, 2022. It's been revised, and it's based on a divisor. And a divisor is just a simple way of you take your balance of the year-end December 31st of the prior year and the year that you're taking, which is the following year, you just divide it by that number, and that will tell you what your minimum distribution is. And so they have to have a set number, so they use the end of December of every year. So sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. It can come back and get you as far as taking out that distribution that based on the end of the year. Because what if the markets go down, even though you're still required to take out the distribution? Because the balance could be at like in 2021, the markets had actually peaked, and then in 2022, the markets went down. So sometimes you can actually spend more of your principal if you're not actually allocated correctly. So I'm going to get a commission report in your hand called Understanding RMDs. And it can be yours if you're one of the first. If you would call in today at 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. We'll mail it or email it, whichever you prefer. It's a very simple read. It encompasses a lot of information about required minimum distributions, which is our today's topic. 888-930-1080. I'm Tim Sparks. This is Retirement Income Source. We appreciate you chiming in today for this hour, and we hope you get a lot of information that's beneficial to you, and especially when it comes to the topic of retirement and other things that are related to retirement, like required minimum distributions. Now, before we get started, I want to let you know that my book is actually going to be out in just under 3 weeks. Right now, it's on pre-order at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Somebody told me the other day it was at Target, and there's also some other bookstores that already has this book coming out. And Reader's Favorite, which is one of the most common critics out there, has already given it a 5-star review. So I'm kind of tickled to death and looking forward to this book coming out. You know, this book talks a lot about everything I share with you here on the radio. It goes a little bit more in depth. It goes above and beyond the scope of what we talk about on the radio, because I've only really got about an hour every week to share some short topics about retirement. Well, the book elaborates on everything. A lot of times, if you're like me, I like to read things and know them to understand them. I'm a visual as well, so we've also created some visual nice charts in this book as well to be able to help people to demonstrate the things that we do. We also have YouTube videos that is becoming very popular, and I talk a lot about topics. You get to see me in person. I use either a whiteboard, and also all of my radio shows are also on there as well. But with that being said, let's get back to our topic on RMDs. So, the Secure Act 2.0 actually made some changes. Actually, for you, if you own an IRA today, it actually benefits most people, especially if you talk to IRA owners that were forced to take out distributions at age 70 and a half, and this was years ago. It has actually been delayed now to age 73. And then, of course, by 2033, and this is for anybody that's got their year of birth is 1958 and beyond, is now age 75. So the delay actually is longer. Now, although it benefits you with the Secure Act 2.0, what it doesn't benefit, in my personal opinion, doesn't really benefit the children. Because the children at one time, the people that had the luxury of having RMDs at age 70 and a half, they could actually pass the baton to their kids, and they can continue to take up minimum distributions where they got more mileage out of their IRAs, and that was a concept called stretch IRAs. When that is no longer the case, now the stretch is condensed down to 10 years. And so that's some of the significant changes, and some of the reason why some people will actually do a raw conversion or other strategies that make sense. Sometimes I actually like other strategies better than I do raw conversions, especially if they're trying to leave money behind in a tax advantage way to their kids. There are some other changes, but a lot of times I don't find them as significant. Of course, the 50% penalty was reduced to 25%, as I shared a little while ago. That is some of the other changes. But now, if you do miss it, you will still be required to take out or take a 10% penalty, where before you could have actually possibly avoided that. So with that being said, if you would like to learn about income first methods and they're appropriate for required minimum distributions, I got an excellent book, The Retirement Income Source, Amazon best-selling author Dave Scranton, hot off the press. And it talks a lot about investing with interest and dividends, which is a great way to satisfy required minimum distributions. And I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's Retirement Income Source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail it out to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome to the Retirement Income Source. Tim Sparks, your host, sponsored by Sparks Financial Group, right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. Today, we're talking about, are you prepared for RMDs, required minimum distributions? Keep in mind, the first rule of embracing required minimum distribution when you're forced to take out these distributions is to invest them correctly. In other words, have them properly allocated so that way when you're taking them out, you're going to easily get more mileage out of your money. Most people, I find, are not even properly allocated. They got their portfolio still in the same mundane type of mutual funds or exchange traded funds. I don't have any problem with them, but they're not ideal for minimum distributions because most of them don't earn enough actual income. Keep in mind, a required minimum distribution is a form of income anyway, and if it's going to be coming out, why not take it out in a form of income it's actually earned through interest and dividends? There is a big difference. And if not, then you're going to ultimately be spending principal. Some years you're going to get growth, other years you're going to get losses. The growth part of it is not big of a deal as whenever you get losses. When you get losses, it means you have to sell more shares. If you were invested correctly and you were getting interest and dividends, and you wouldn't have to worry about selling shares. So it's not necessarily always about worried about your balance. It's the same way as a landlord never worries about the value of the real estate that they own. They're more interested in the income that they get from the renters. Or another way of putting it, a farmer that owns a lot of land, all they're doing is living off the crops that the land provides. Therefore, their assets are still intact. They're going to get more long-term appreciation. That's what growth is. It's capital appreciation or or depreciation, I should say. It goes down in value. And, if you're invested in mutual funds that have stocks in them, you're going to get appreciation some years, depreciation other years, which means you're going to sell shares, lesser shares in the up market, more shares in the down market, which means you're deteriorating or cannibalizing your principal over time. To me, that doesn't even make sense because there's so many reasons why you want to preserve your principal through interest and dividends. If you preserve your principal, you're going to be able to have the money for some of the main reasons is down the road. Because see, a lot of people love the idea of not spending their principal, and they love the idea of seeing their account values remain as they're taking out money from their portfolio. Well, if that's the case, you get to the last 4 or 5 years of life, you get run across a catastrophic healthcare situation. Now, if you don't have long-term care insurance, guess what? You're going to start spending that IRA down very quickly. And if you spent your principal all these years, you may not have as much of an IRA in the first place, which means basically That could ultimately mean it could be a lien. It could be put on your property because the nursing homes will do that. If you don't think so, just ask anybody that's ever been through this process and you'll find out that that's actually true. So that's the reason why people try to protect their homes and so forth through proper estate planning to be able to minimize that or even eliminate that if all possible. But regardless, when it comes to required minimum distributions, you want to be allocated in a way, satisfied through minimum distributions. And that kind of reminds me of a lady that came in. $2 million. She's age 75, going on 76, I think, before the end of the year. So the required minimum distribution formula will be based on age 76. Well, the divisor, or equivalent to that, is like about a 4 1/8% of her portfolio. So she's got $2 million, so she's going to be forced to take out a little over $80,000. That's what she has to take out. That's a minimum distribution. Now, the good news is she needs $90,000 already. Okay? She needs 90. The minimum is 80. So that means, and she's living on 90, so she don't have to worry about satisfying the minimum distribution if she's taking out 90 now. Maybe when she gets up to around age 80, she will, because the formula of the required minimum distribution continues to increase slightly each and every year. But for now, she's in good shape. The downfall is the interest and dividends, since most of her portfolio is primarily in stock. Stock do not pay a lot of interest or dividends in the first place, about 90% of her portfolio. So she's only getting about $30,000. Now, she's doing this on her own. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. Minimum distribution is 80. Let's just go ahead and count the 90. She's living on 90,000. And she's only getting $30,000 from the interest and the dividend. That means she's taking out $60,000 a year from her principal, regardless of what the markets perform or they don't perform. And so when they're performing, you don't really think anything of it. You're selling shares, but if they're recovering, it's not that big of a deal. But either way, she's taking out $60,000. And that is her own money that took her many years to actually grow. That's the reason why some people are concerned about running out of money. And keep in mind, she is also going to be possibly challenged with long-term care into the future. So there's a reason why she wants to preserve her principal. So you got to keep that in mind. It's one thing to, take one part of what I'm saying without thinking about the bigger picture down the road. What if this portfolio continues to decrease and diminish because she already knows and she has to accept that she's spending $60,000 of her own principal, which means she has to recover that every year in the growth column because she's not making an interest and dividends. Another thing, she does this on her own, so she doesn't have a financial advisor. If she had a financial advisor, then the fee on the financial advice would probably be equivalent or close to the equivalent of the dividends she would be earning, which would be even worse. So and got to keep that in mind, people. I'm talking about a do-it-yourselfer here trying to do this on her own. If I compare this to somebody using that hires an advisor, then the problem's even bigger if you're taking that $90,000. Now you're dependent totally on growth each and every year. So if you want to know more about properly allocating your portfolio for the purpose of required minimum distributions, I want to get a commission report in your hand that helps you understand that. And you can get that by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail it to you or email it to you, whichever you prefer. Again, that's 888-930-1080. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and we're talking about, are you prepared for RMDs? And specifically, we're talking about having your IRA allocated in a way so that way you can, and when you're forced to take out these distributions, you're at least not having to worry about what the markets are doing, up, down, or sideways. You can have more comfort knowing it's coming from interest and dividends and not from your own money. And that's exactly what I was explaining just about a minute ago, was a lady who's been doing it on her own for many years, and she felt comfortable doing it on her own, which there's people out there that do try to invest their money on their own. There's nothing wrong with that, absolutely. As long as the tailwind is at their back, the markets are doing well, there's nothing wrong. It just, I kind of look at the flip side of that too, right? Because the markets don't always cooperate. As long as they do, there's really, you don't see any kind of problem as of yet. But if the markets don't cooperate, how do you still take out a distribution that you're still going to be forced to take? And so at the end of the day, there's different ways you can actually do that. Some people will actually put so much money in a cash account. That means they sold principal to put it in a cash account. And they'll put like 2 years worth of reserves to satisfy. In her case, let's just say she did that. She's got to take out $90,000 a year for income. If she took out that $90,000 times 2 years, that's $180,000. Let's just say she puts $200,000 in a cash account. Right now, thankfully, it's earning maybe 4.5% because rates have come down. So the yields are starting to drop in those accounts, and that is where you do run risk there with cash earning nothing. But at the end of the day, she's got 1.8 million. It's actually over there growing, or hopefully growing, and you run some risk here. And so what I mean is nobody knows the future, right? And if I can share with you people that did not know that 2008 was going to happen, that actually went through retirement, and actually they got whipsawed so bad in retirement they can never recover, and they wind up having a very disappointing last 10 or 15 years of their retirement lifestyle, and they're actually going through that right now, and people that actually we couldn't even help. So a lot of times, it's real easy to get comfortable when the markets have been doing well, and without thinking about what the markets can easily change on a whim and never ever recover for many, many years. And those are called recessions, because recessions typically take 5 to 7 years to recover. Well, if you have $1.8 million and you have a $200,000 cushion inside of a cash account, for example, like she did, this is what I was explaining to her, is what if we have another 2013? I mean, it happened once, and you've already agreed that it can happen again. What if that happens again? I don't know. I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, what are you going to do? I mean, your 1.8 million is not going to recover any of that $200,000. That's what your hope was with that being strategic in that type of plan. But I told her, it says, what if it doesn't occur? So I told her, I said, if you had your $2 million earning interest and dividends, like our clients do, I said that this is a choice. I mean, this is a philosophy we do, and I get it. You're paying a financial advisor, or you're not paying a financial advisor. Now you could maybe pay a financial advisor, like our firm. You could hire a firm, and we can just get you interest and dividends, still keep you in the stock market, and minimize or even eliminate the whole withdrawal of any principal and just take it out in dividends and still be in the stock market. I told her, I said, you can actually do that. And she didn't really realize that you can do that. But here's the kicker. She doesn't feel comfortable that she can actually pick the right stocks, because you have to do individual stocks now to be able to get that type of level of custom like portfolio and also get a potential growth at the same time. You see, you can invest in stocks because when it comes to value stocks, dividend value stocks, it's a conservative way to be in the stock market. It's not, it doesn't eliminate risk, right? Because we're still talking about stocks. But it's a lot better and gives people more peace of mind than it is when you're trying to grow your way through, which is exactly what she was trying to do. Keep in mind, she had no defense. So all $90,000 of her, or excuse me, 60 of her $90,000 was coming from her principal, and she was betting that she was going to make $60,000 a year from growth, and that was not going to happen. So that's the reason why you want to be allocated properly for required minimum distributions. So that way you're not spending your principal, and therefore you're going to naturally get more mileage in your retirement spending years. So if you would like to learn more, I'd like to get an excellent book in your hand on income first methods, even utilizing stocks to do so, where you can get growth and income, but income needs to be the priority. And there's 3 great reasons why income first is much more smarter way of actually satisfying RMDs. And I want to get this book in your hand, The Retirement Income Source, Amazon bestseller author Dave Scranton, a CFA. And I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's Retirement Income Source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail it to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source with Tim Sparks. I'll be right back. Welcome to the Retirement Income Source, Tim Sparks. Our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. Today we're talking about, are you prepared for required minimum distributions? Those are something that's required when you turn age 73. If your year of birth is 1958 or beyond, then you don't have to worry about taking that till age 75. Minimum distribution means there's a certain portion of your money each and every year it's got to earn in order to satisfy that distribution. And if you do not take it, you will actually pay a penalty up to 25%. There's ways to be able to minimize that, but you got to be able to make sure you don't forget to fill out the proper paperwork, or your CPA or accountant can do this for you, which is now required, but they're still going to assess a 10% penalty because you missed your required minimum distribution. That's the new rules thanks to Secure Act 2.0. Earlier, we talked about allocating your IRA in a way so that you're getting your required minimum distribution coming from interest and dividends. And the point of that is to preserve your principal. You're going to preserve your principal if you're not selling shares. And it's the same way it is, just like our show, what we talk about throughout each and every week, is if you want to get more mileage out of your money, you're going to have to invest in a way where you can maintain your principal and just spend the income that it earns. Well, most people are not set up that way. And the biggest reason why they're not set up that way is because today's common advice, the herd mentality, is still using or utilizing mutual funds or exchange traded funds to get them through retirement. Therefore, you are unfortunately selling principal. And if you don't think you're not, then you probably will look at your statement throughout the year and notice that you're selling shares. That's what I mean. Selling shares means the interest and dividends that your portfolio is consisted of does not pay you enough income, so therefore you're having to sell shares. It's still income, but I don't call that income the old-fashioned way. I'm talking about real income, interest, dividends that will give you more mileage out of your money, and especially when it comes to required minimum distribution. Because you want to truly preserve your wealth. To do that, you got to be able to invest this way. Now, some of you may not care. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's your money. Sometimes people think they can, continue to bet that retirement is going to the markets are going to go up, and they're going to continue to win in Vegas. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I don't like my plans to be set up that way. And not only that, our clients are actually getting growth even through the down years. And why? Because whenever the markets do turn around, they still got all their shares intact. They're more of a capitalist than somebody that actually has been spending shares each and every year, because that's something constant. You got to be prepared for that when you're taking out income, whether it's income because you're taking it anyway or you're forced to take out these distributions. And if you want to know how, then you need to understand the formula, total return equals I plus G. It's a great commission report. I want to get it in your hand to be able to how to properly allocate your IRAs in a way to be prepared for these. And also, even if you're taking income at all out of your IRAs or your 401ks. What is the proper way? This commission report can be yours if you call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. Again, the topic or the title of this report is TR equals I plus G. Total return equals income plus growth. How do you get that? How do you get the right formula to work for you so that way you can get more mileage out of your money? Again, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and today we are talking about RMDs. Are you prepared for required minimum distributions? Well, I ran across a client. It's been a client now for a couple years, and she had an estate plan done back in 2002. And most people, whenever they get book plans, book trust plans, I call them, it's paper, right? You know, you get a binder, it's probably got, you know, it's the size of a telephone book. You probably have those if you have a trust or even will and all the documents, the power of attorneys and everything. So, you know, most people think once they get those, they're ready to go, they're all set. Well, I hate to tell you, you know, when it comes to an estate plan, it's ongoing. If you bought the book plan, the book trust, in her case, since back in 2002, there's been a lot of changes that has occurred. So what I mean is there's ongoing costs, just like there's ongoing costs to keep up your car, the maintenance on your vehicle. Now, this is not about estate planning. I'll talk more about that later in another show. But she lost her spouse about 3 weeks ago, lost her husband, and he had an IRA. And keep in mind, she'd been a client, but I don't get into the people's estate plan too much if they already had something, and not unless they asked me some questions. And to be quite honest with you, I got to thinking, well, I need to be a little bit more proactive, especially even when it comes to our clients, and you're going to find out why here just in a minute. And it's so important to have the beneficiary designations correct when it comes to IRAs. When her husband passed away, and she got the paperwork in so that way she can take and you know, rightfully so, own the IRA as if she originally owned it, even though it was in her husband's name, and his spouse can actually roll that over in their name. She can't do that. Why? Because she pointed the beneficiary as the trust. Now, did you hear what I said? An IRA beneficiary is the trust. And I asked her, I said, how did you do that? She says, well, that's what my attorney told me back in 2002. I said, did he tell you that IRAs are also included? And she said, well, she just thought that was the way it was. Now, keep in mind, she did everything she was supposed to do, is to fund the trust correctly. Fund means point everything to the trust. But when it comes to an IRA, you don't want to do that, because now it's going to create a taxable event unless she has a conduit trust. You know, that's some language that you put into a trust where she can actually take that benefit maybe over 5 years, because Secure Act actually kind of changed that conduit clause as well. So in other words, now she's going to have to is going to have to liquidate this through the trust and pay the taxes up front she could have otherwise avoided. And I mean, think about it for a moment. I mean, you may not be in this situation, but you never, ever, 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 if you're a spouse of an IRA, you want to be 100% primary beneficiary. Now, if you want to make contingent beneficiaries, which is sometimes encouraged to be the trust, that's one thing, and not necessarily your kids, but because, of course, most people still make their kids contingent beneficiaries. And sometimes that's, sometimes that's okay and sometimes it's not okay. And of course, I will save the reasons why on that later on in another talk on another show later on, because I am going to actually talk a little bit more about that, why sometimes it does not make sense for the kids to be contingent beneficiaries on the IRA, and then sometimes it does. So again, most people default that way because that's what they're being told. But make sure that your spouse is your primary beneficiary and not the trust. In her case, it's going to cost her some taxes. Now, think about that for a moment. Some people I run across have $1 million, $2 million, $4 million IRAs. That's a major problem if you have your trust as the primary beneficiary and not your spouse, because that can be a lot of taxes. So you want to make sure your beneficiary designations are set up correctly, so that way that your spouse would actually wind up with that money without having to pay those unnecessary taxes. What I'm going to do, I'm going to talk more, extend this next week a little bit more about what to do with required minimum distributions to get the most efficiency. And we're going to talk more about that, and you probably want to stay tuned next week as we actually talk about that. But for now, we're going to give you one more opportunity to be able to get a great book, Retirement Income Source, Amazon bestselling author Dave Scranton, CFA. And this book is a free copy for you if you're one of the first 5 callers of today's Retirement Income Source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. We'll mail it out to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. Again, next week we're going to talk more about required minimum distributions, what should you do with them and so forth to make sense out of them, especially if they're unwanted and you're still going to be taking them out. How can you get more, maybe more potential growth and still be able to pass a legacy to your kids? And there's certain better, unique ways to be able to do that. That can actually even be more tax advantage to your kids. But we hope you've gained a lot from today's required minimum distribution show, and we look forward to next week. You've been tuned in to the Retirement Income Source with Tim Sparks. We look forward to some more great information again next week. Thanks for listening.